At America's most unforgiving sniper range, a decorated Master Chief mocked a quiet janitor's request to shoot. But when she took his custom rifle, the laughter stopped, and a legend no one knew existed was about to be revealed. The Mojave Desert Sun hammered down on Fortitude Range, a classified installation so remote it felt like it had been scrubbed from the map. Here, in this furnace of shimmering asphalt and disciplined silence, America's deadliest marksmen were forged. Inside the sterile confines of Building 7, Alara Vance moved with a practiced, almost silent efficiency. Dressed in a loose-fitting gray jumpsuit that concealed the toned physique beneath, she was a ghost, her presence as unremarkable as the low hum of the industrial air conditioners. Her ash-blonde hair was pulled back into a tight, functional bun, and her slate-gray eyes, sharp and discerning, were perpetually cast downward, focused on the methodical sweep of her mop across the polished concrete floors. To the elite operators who strode past, their boots echoing with purpose, she was just part of the facility's machinery. The janitor, an invisible hand that reset the world to a state of clean each day. As she worked, fragments of sensation would flicker through her mind, unbidden and jarring. The phantom kick of a rifle against her shoulder, the scent of gun oil and hot brass, the satisfying metallic click of a magazine seating home. Hushed, urgent voices speaking a language she couldn't place echoed in the periphery of her hearing. She'd learned to dismiss them as mental static, the brain's meaningless noise, remnants of a life she couldn't access. A soft beep from her digital watch signaled it was time to clean the outdoor ranges. She gathered her cart, the squeak of its wheels the only sound announcing her passage, and stepped out into the blinding glare. The heat, while over 100 degrees, was a physical force, but Alara barely registered it. Her focus was on the far end of the complex, the Phantom Corridor, a state-of-the-art range where legends were either made or broken. Gunnery Sergeant Rex Gunny Thorne stood like a monument carved from granite, his weathered face a roadmap of campaigns fought in forgotten corners of the world. He watched a line of SEALs, their muscles coiled with potential, prepare for their qualification run. Gentlemen, his voice was a low growl that cut through the desert wind without effort. This course separates the elite from the merely exceptional. 5 targets, variable distances, unpredictable crosswinds. You miss once, you're done. This isn't about being good. It's about being perfect. Alara kept to the perimeter, wiping down equipment stands and collecting discarded water bottles. She worked in silence, but her gaze kept drifting to the firing line. As she bent to clean a scuff mark near a shooting station, she unconsciously mirrored the stance Gunny Thorne had just demonstrated to a struggling recruit. Feet perfectly spaced, core engaged, a subtle shift in balance. It was a flawless, instinctive mimicry, a ghost of muscle memory. The moment was fleeting, gone as quickly as it came, noticed by no one. Lieutenant Caden Ace Sterling stepped up to the line. Tall, with a jawline that seemed engineered for recruitment posters and an air of unshakable self-assurance. He was the star of the current training class. He settled into his position, made a minute adjustment to his scope, and fired. 5 shots, 5 hits, all within the center mass. Impressive. The digital scoreboard confirmed his top score for the day. Sterling rose, a smug smile playing on his lips. That's how it's done, he announced to the group, his eyes landing on Alara as she worked nearby. He took a deliberate swig from a can of energy drink. Then, with a casual flick of his wrist, spilled the sticky, fluorescent liquid onto the floor she had just cleaned. Oops, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Guess you missed a spot, sweetheart. A few of the younger operators snickered before Gunny Thorne silenced them with a single, icy glare. Alara said nothing. She simply retrieved her mop, her expression unreadable, and began methodically cleaning the mess. Her movements remained economical and precise, betraying no hint of anger or frustration. Later, as a new recruit struggled with the most distant target, consistently missing by inches, Gunny's frustration mounted. Can't you read the wind? He barked. From her position 50 yards away, where she was emptying a trash receptacle, Alara murmured to herself, her voice barely a whisper. Wind shifted. Up 2 clicks, left 1. It was a subconscious utterance, a professional assessment that escaped her lips before she could stop it. But in the desert quiet, Gunny Thorne's hearing, honed by years of listening for the faintest signs of danger, caught the whisper. His eyes narrowed. It was a wild, illogical impulse, but he decided to act on it. "Sterling, give the kid your rifle," he commanded. Then to the recruit, "Adjust your scope." Up 2 clicks, left 1. The recruit, bewildered but obedient, made the adjustment. He took a breath, squeezed the trigger, and a resounding ping echoed back from the steel target. A perfect hit. The recruit turned to Gunny with a look of stunned gratitude, but the gunnery sergeant wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the far end of the range, at the back of a janitor who was now quietly replacing the liner in the trash can, seemingly oblivious to the small miracle her whispered words had just produced. A seed of profound, unsettling curiosity had been planted. The afternoon sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the range, when a black SUV rolled to a stop. General Madsen, a man whose stern presence commanded instant respect, emerged to observe the final qualifications. The operators instinctively straightened their postures. "Gunny," the general nodded. "I trust your team is living up to its reputation." "They're holding their own, sir," Thorne replied, his tone neutral. "Lieutenant Sterling set a new course record this morning." As if on cue, Sterling stepped forward. "With your permission, General, I'd be happy to run it again." Madsen gave a curt nod. Sterling took his position, his movements a symphony of practiced confidence. His performance was flawless. 5 shots, 5 perfect bullseyes. The scoreboard flashed, confirming a new, even higher record. "Excellent work, Lieutenant," Madsen acknowledged. "Anyone else care to challenge the lieutenant's score?" Thorne asked, a note of tired resignation in his voice. He expected silence. Instead, a quiet voice cut through the air. "May I?" All heads swiveled. Alara stood there, a cleaning rag in her hand, her expression calm and unreadable. A beat of stunned silence was followed by an eruption of laughter. "The janitor wants a shot," Sterling exclaimed, his voice thick with derision. "Go on, Gunny. Let her. It'll be the best entertainment we've had all day." Thorne hesitated. He studied Alara's face, searching for something, a sign of madness, a joke. He found only a quiet, unnerving certainty. Against his better judgment, he unholstered his personal sidearm, a custom Beretta 92X performance that was his pride and joy. "You know how to handle this?" he asked, offering it grip first. The moment Alara's hand closed around the weapon, the atmosphere on the range shifted. The transformation was instantaneous and absolute. The quiet, unassuming janitor vanished. In her place stood a weapon system. Her posture aligned, her breathing became controlled and shallow, her slate-gray eyes sharpened with an intensity that made the hairs on Thorne's arms stand up. The laughter died, replaced by a thick, curious silence. Even Sterling watched, his smirk fading into a frown of confusion. Alara raised the pistol. She didn't seem to aim so much as become one with the weapon. A single, deep breath. Then 5 shots erupted in a sequence so fast and precise they sounded like a single controlled burst. Boop, 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 boop. The digital scoreboard flickered, then solidified. A perfect score. New course record. A wave of disbelief washed over the assembled SEALs. "Beginner's luck," someone muttered weakly. General Madsen stepped forward, his face a mask of stone. "Reset the course," he commanded. "Advanced protocol. Random sequence." The range technician, his hands trembling slightly, programmed a new configuration. More distant targets, more challenging angles, a sequence designed to break even the most seasoned operator. Alara showed no reaction. She raised the pistol again. 5 more shots, delivered with the same impossible, machine-like precision. The scoreboard flashed again. Another perfect score. Stunned, absolute silence descended. Alara calmly placed the pistol on the table, her movements fluid and deliberate. She turned, as if to retrieve her cleaning cart. "Colonel Vance?" General Madsen's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a thunderclap. Alara froze, her body straightening reflexively at the forgotten title. "Sir," she replied, the single word imbued with a military bearing no janitor could ever possess. "My God," the general whispered, his eyes wide with a dawning, incredible realization. Operation Echo. It wasn't a failure. 20 minutes later, they were in a windowless, soundproofed briefing room deep inside Building 7, a sterile space known as the Vault. Only General Madsen, Gunny Thorne, a humbled and pale Lieutenant Sterling, and Alara remained. The air was thick with unspoken questions. 3 years ago, General Madsen began, his voice somber. "Colonel Alara Echo Vance was the architect of our most advanced special operations marksmanship program. The Phantom Corridor methodology, Gunny, the very doctrine you teach, was her creation. She didn't just write the book, she defined the language." Thorne stared at Alara, his professional world tilting on its axis. He was seeing the ghost who had haunted his training manuals for years. Her final mission, the general continued, was to field test new asymmetric warfare tactics in the Kandahar Valley. Her unit was ambushed. The official report listed no survivors. Colonel Vance was declared killed in action. He paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. 18 months later, a deep cover asset reported seeing an American woman matching her description in a remote prison compound. "We mounted a Black Ops extraction. We got her back, but the woman we recovered was fractured. She had endured severe physical and psychological trauma." Alara listened to the story of her own life as if it were a biography of a stranger, her face betraying no emotion. The diagnosis was extensive PTSD coupled with dissociative amnesia, Madsen explained. The recommendation from psychological services was radical. Instead of forcing her to remember, they suggested we place her in an environment connected to her expertise, but without the pressure of her rank or identity. A form of passive environmental immersion therapy. Thorne's eyes widened in understanding. "You made her a janitor. Here, at the facility she designed." "Precisely," Madsen confirmed. Her service record was sealed at the highest level. Her identity was scrubbed. Only a handful of people in the entire DoD knew she was alive, let alone here. The theory was that the familiar routines and environment might help her brain rebuild the pathways to her memory without re-traumatizing her. Sterling, who had been shrinking in his chair, finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Sir, I had no idea. I remember the calculations," Alara said suddenly, her voice quiet but clear. Every head snapped toward her. "I remember modeling wind shear coefficients and parabolic trajectories. The math, the physics. I remember how to design the test." She frowned, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "I just don't remember being a colonel." The room fell silent. Her procedural memory, the how, was intact, but her episodic memory, the who, was a blank slate. Gunny Thorne slowly rose to his feet. He faced Alara, his expression a mixture of awe and profound respect. He drew himself to full attention, his movements crisp and deliberate, and rendered a perfect, formal salute. "Colonel Vance," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "it is an honor to finally meet you properly." One by one, the others in the room stood and followed his lead, including a visibly shaken Caden Sterling. Alara looked at the salutes, an echo of recognition in her eyes, and after a moment's hesitation, her body responded with muscle memory, returning the salute with impeccable form. The next few days were a whirlwind of transition. Alara was moved from the Spartan maintenance dorm to officers' quarters. The room felt both alien and vaguely familiar, like a dream she couldn't quite grasp upon waking. Her sessions with Dr. Reeves, a sharp, compassionate psychologist flown in from Walter Reed, became the anchor of her new reality. Think of it this way, Alara, Dr. Reeves explained during one session. Your brain is a library where the how-to section is perfectly preserved, but the autobiography section has been damaged. We can't force the books back on the shelf. We have to give them time to reappear on their own. The most difficult meeting was with Lieutenant Sterling. He approached her outside the briefing room, his usual swagger completely gone, replaced by a raw, genuine humility. "Colonel," he began, his voice strained, "there's no excuse for my behavior. It was unprofessional, disrespectful, and I am profoundly sorry." Alara studied him for a long moment. "My background wasn't exactly public knowledge, Lieutenant," she said, her tone even. Apology accepted. The relief that washed over his face was palpable. At Gunny Thorne's invitation, she began observing the training sessions. At first, she stood silently at the back, a quiet observer. But her expertise was a current that couldn't be contained. During a rapid acquisition drill, she noticed a common flaw in the operator's breathing cadence. "If I may, Gunny," she said, stepping forward. Thorne nodded, ceding the floor. Alara picked up a rifle, the weapon settling into her shoulder as if it were an extension of her own body. "You're holding your breath on the transition," she explained, her voice calm and authoritative. "It creates tension. You need to breathe through the movement. Like this." What followed was a masterclass. She broke down the most complex shooting mechanics into simple, understandable components. She didn't just demonstrate, she taught. She explained the why behind every movement, every breath. The SEALs, men who considered themselves the best in the world, listened with the rapt attention of novices, their performance improving visibly with each piece of advice. Later that week, General Madsen formally offered her a position. Officially, for security purposes, Colonel Vance remains Kia. Unofficially, we want you to serve as a special technical advisor to the Phantom Corridor program. Alara looked out at the range, the place where she had been both a ghost and a legend. "I'll do it," she said, "but the men I train deserve to know the truth about my condition. No secrets." Madsen and Thorne exchanged a look, then nodded in agreement. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a bridge between the world of the janitor and the world of the colonel. 6 months later, the Phantom Corridor was operating at a level of excellence that shattered every existing record in the special operations community. Alara, known to the operators simply as Echo, had become its soul. She wore no rank, but her quiet authority was absolute. She had found a new equilibrium. The fragmented memories of her past no longer haunted her. Instead, they were pieces of a puzzle she was slowly putting together, not to recreate the woman she was, but to inform the woman she was becoming. Her quarters were now a blend of two lives. Military commendations she didn't remember earning hung next to photos of the desert landscape she had come to love. As a training session concluded, she stood with Gunny Thorne, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. "You've had a good influence on them," Thorne said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Sterling is becoming a fine leader. He's more focused on mentoring than showing off now." Alara gave a small, rare smile. "I read more of my file last night," she said quietly. Operation Echo. It was designed to find and train operators who could think and act beyond conventional limits. She paused, a hint of irony in her voice. "It's funny. I became my own test subject." "And what's your professional assessment of the subject?" Thorne asked with a gentle humor. This time, she laughed, a genuine, clear sound. "Promising," she replied, "but highly unorthodox." They stood together as darkness fell over Fortitude Range. "I may never get all the pieces back," Alara said, her gaze fixed on the first stars appearing in the twilight sky. "But I'm starting to realize that might be okay. I was forged the skills I have, and what I do now is train the best marksman in the world." She turned to Thorne, a newfound peace settling in her eyes. "That feels like enough." As they walked back toward the main complex, she was neither Colonel Vance nor Alara the janitor. She was Echo, a new legend forged not in the fire of memory, but in the quiet, steady pursuit of purpose. Her story reminds us that true strength isn't just about who you were, but about who you have the courage to become. What part of Alara's journey resonated with you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and please, always comment with respect. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more tales of hidden heroes.